Welcome to How to Buy a House. This is Phoebe Blamey from Clover Financial. We help you make good money decisions, and buying a house is a different experience for everyone. And I've been fortunate enough to help thousands of people into their first home, their dream home, their investment property. And this is one of their stories.
I was 24 when I bought the most stunning apartment that there is. A 2-bedroom apartment in a much older style building is what I wanted.
That those older style apartments that are bigger and a little bit more solid, that you've got a nice balcony on yours.
She knew how tough it was for first home buyers out there. The best mortgage broker happens to be my boss too. Place your money in places that'll take you far in life and set you up and be a good investment. Don't want to sound all hippie, but it was all about the feel. It was all about the vibe of the place. I mean, looking around just sealed the deal, really.
If I can address everything that was distressing the first lender with the second lender before we submit it, that makes the process so much smoother.
Like boxes to tick when buying, I wanted somewhere that could be long-term investment and would have good, capital growth. A nice little townhouse or something would be ideal, but you'll hit a point where you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm never finding my place. But when it's meant to be, it'll be.
Okay, so Bea, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me, Phoebe, my wonderful boss. So I am 26 years old. I work for Clover Financial Solutions as Phoebe's EA, and I'm also doing my master's in property at RMIT as well.
Exactly, all the things. How old were you when you bought your house?
I was 24 when I bought my beautiful, the most stunning apartment that there is in Hawthorne.
And at the time you bought, before I get there, who do you live with?
So I live with one of my best friends, Molly. She, when I said I wanted to start looking for somewhere, and she jumped on the bandwagon of wanting to be my housemate. So she came and looked at every apartment with me and everything. I joked that I bought it for both of us, but not actually. Yeah, she's my extremely wonderful, couldn't be happier housemate. She is the best. She's like my little housewife. She cooks for me. She just is everything that's you'd want in a housemate. She's perfect. So
That's so lovely.
Very lucky.
And when you bought, what was your dream home? What would you actually want to live in?
Well, for my first home, I obviously had my budget set. And I was really tossing up between a lot of options. I sort of would look more towards, the outer suburbs just for fun. I was like, oh my gosh, I could buy a little house there and stuff. But really at the end of the day, I really wanted somewhere where I wanted to live. And I ended up buying my place in Hawthorne because I've spent a lot of my life growing up in Hawthorne. I work in Hawthorne. I went to university in Hawthorne. It's very, very comforting for me. And even though having the option to, go to Richmond or to out towards Burwood or something like that could have been fun. But at the end of the day, I was so comfortable wanting somewhere in Hawthorne. So a 2-bedroom apartment in a much older style building is what I wanted. But yeah, it was very important to me to have a older style apartment building, something sort of about the 70s, which is when mine was built. They just are built better, have better space, and are a better investment, I think, for my money. So
I think so too, and I think that that those older style apartments that are bigger and a little bit more solid, that you've got a nice balcony on yours, you've got beautiful kitchen, plenty of space. The bedrooms aren't so small that they only fit a bed in. There's a little bit of room to move, which I think is important when you're living with someone as well.
It definitely is, because a lot of the places I would look at, they would have one good-sized bedroom and one just little shoebox, which I just was like, I don't want that to be the second bedroom that, my friend Molly has to sleep in. I don't want that to be her room, and I want space. And luckily, that's very common with a lot of 2-bedroom apartments. One's a good size and one's just tiny. Say it's the second bedroom to say it's a 2-bedroom place. So I was very lucky that I did find a place with 2 very good sized bedrooms. They're almost the same size, but they're absolutely perfect. So, and that I haven't seen that in many new builds. And, my apartment building's only 3 stories high. It's not, not just heaps of apartment's crammed into a small space. It's very comfortable. There's a lot of nice space around.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And you're opposite a beautiful park as well,
Yeah,
which I think is really nice too, because you look out the window at something beautiful.
it is.
Now, the most important question I think is how did you, the people really, really want to know and understand is how did you get ready to buy?
Yeah.
So what were the moves you made in order to get before you purchased?
Here I am. I think so. At the start of it all, I never thought buying a house would be anything. Even it wasn't even on my radar. Nothing. I spent all my money on travel. I just, worked for traveling. I really didn't think it was something I could even fathom. From everything you hear in the media, first time buyers buying is impossible unless you're earning some crazy amount of money or are very well off or something. And unfortunately, my grandma passed away, and she left me and my sisters and my cousins all some money purely to put towards a house. She knew how tough it was for first time buyers out there, and she just wanted to do something to help give us that boost so that we could all get into the property market, because she knew how important it is in your life, in your investments, in your future. So she did, and obviously I've got the best mortgage broker, happens to be my boss too, which is wonderful. And so she was able to really work everything out for me, and luckily I didn't need to pay lender's mortgage insurance with the amount that my grandmother left me, which I was very, very happy with, very fortunate to be able to do. And it was quite a long looking process, quite a few months, a lot of disappointments, bit of a roller coaster, but eventually the place, and even after I ended up getting my place, I would just sort of pop back onto realestate.com and just be like, oh, I wonder what else is out there. And I gladly never saw anything that I liked nearly as much as my place. So yeah, the process was long. In terms of a deposit though, luckily my grandma was very, very generous and really had a good mindset when it came to money and where you should spend it.
She really did, didn't she? She's a very canny, very smart woman with money, because she had to look after her own money for quite a long time, because your grandfather had passed away when she was so young, or so comparably young. And that, did you learn a lot from her, do you think?
So much. As I got older, since about 18 or something, when I think you do learn about money a bit when you're younger, but I think most people, I would say, learn money from their parents or their family and how their family deals with money. And I think the way my grandmother dealt with money is everything I want to be when I'm now, really. Really, she had a really good attitude. She didn't waste. She was very, very smart, very frugal, but very generous at the same time. She donated a lot of money to charities and had the ability to be able to live life comfortably, but not beyond her means ever. And I definitely always want to, anytime I'm making a money decision, I try to think of my grandma and think of what she would have done in that situation, how she would have dealt with her money then too. And it really taught me a lot. Obviously I learned a lot about money from her, but very much how much your family influences your views of money, and that can really make or break you. I easily could have gotten an inheritance and they would have been like, here you go, lump of money in your account, go nuts, go on a big, trip around Europe or something. But which, yeah, cool, would have been fun for the trip around Europe, but at the end of the day, it wouldn't have set me up for my future. And that's what I learned from my grandma, is how to place your money in places that will take you far in life and set you up and be a good investment, really. Yeah, so I learned.
She was very, very good to do that, and to specify, I think, the use of funds so that you were getting it purely to buy a house. It wasn't for the trip overseas. It wasn't for educational purposes. It was for starting. It wasn't for starting a business. It was to buy a house, and I think that was an amazing thing for her to do, for you and your sisters, who are all in your own homes now.
Yes, very lucky, and all but one of my cousins as well. It's very cool to see the first homes we've all bought. I've bought a cute 2-bedroom apartment in Hawthorne. My older sister, she's bought a little funny house in Abbotsford that they're just ripping apart and renovating themselves. My older sister, she's married with a little little kids, so she's bought a very nice big apartment, 2-bedroom apartment, very comfortable family living space. My oldest cousin, she's bought a farm with her husband because they want to be out new married.
Mm.
My other cousin, he's bought a little house in Sydney because he lives in Sydney now, and my other cousin's yet to buy. But it's very cool how we've all sort of adapted the situation to match our lives, and it's worked out so amazing and so cool looking at how we've all done it.
I reckon it's amazing. I think it really is, because a family of people that have grown up really closely with each other, you and your cousins, and it's interesting to see how different everything's become as you get older.
It is very cool.
It's very cool. So we went through what you bought, which was a 2-bedroom apartment. How did you know that the one that you bought was the right one?
Like I said, looked in a lot of places. I looked in some that I walked in the front door and almost walked out straight away. And it purely was, don't want to sound all hippie, but it was all about the feel. It was all about the vibe of the place. And I walked into this apartment. I hadn't even looked around, and I was like, this is it. This is it. I knew it. I could feel it. I just felt right. I felt comfortable. I knew, I was like, yep, this is my place. This is where I'm meant to be. Everything. Before I'd even looked around, I got that feeling. And then, looking around just sealed the deal, really.
Mm.
And I just know, and even on my very first night when I moved in, one of my good friends, I was here by myself. My housemate hadn't moved in yet. And my friend was like, oh, like, you'll hear noises. You'll be a bit creeped out. You'll be a bit scared. It'll be weird. And best night's sleep of my life. I'm probably exhausted from moving. But like,
yeah,
and I woke up and I was just like, I was so comfortable so quickly. And still every day I walk in, I just like still get the chills. I'm just like, yep, I love this place. I couldn't be happier.
It's beautiful, isn't it? I had a similar thing the one that I'm living in now, when I first saw it, and I'd been looking for something really similar. And as soon as I saw it, as soon as I walked in, I just knew, and I was like, that's my house. This is my house.
Yep.
And this is what I'm going to do with it, and this is how it's going to look, but this is my house.
Yeah, exactly.
And I see people do that every day, and it's really hard to explain to someone when they're in the process of buying and they think this is the one. Like one of the first auctions, I think you remember that I went with you, and you were pretty determined that was going to be the one, and it ended up going for a lot more than you would have been prepared to pay for it.
I didn't even have the chance to bid, even if I wanted to.
Yeah.
It was impossible. And now looking back, I can't believe that I was like, oh, thank gosh I didn't get that place. Like, yeah, It's amazing.
Yeah, because that was in a much bigger situation. Yes, it was close to a park and it had beautiful windows and all that sort of stuff, but compared to where you are now,
needed more work, not as good security.
Yeah, all those things.
Amazing.
Now let's talk about your home loan. How did you go with getting your home loan? Because we had a few bumps on the road.
We did have a few bumps in the road. All good fun for sure. My sister was actually getting a home loan at a very similar time, so we sort of were kind of on track together. We tried with one lender because I have a dividend income, so obviously different lenders have different policies, and some would accept that, some wouldn't, some would only accept some of it, some would not accept it all. They're all so different. And so we tried with one lender who was good who seemed good, and the back and forth that we went through was absolutely hilarious. We still laugh about it today. The things they were coming back with were just absolutely obscene. And so we then took the home loan to Macquarie. Me and my sister, we moved our applications over as well. Obviously, it helps that I work for my mortgage broker that was around when we could do all these things. And, moved it to Macquarie. They were amazing. It was very, very quick, very easy process. And, couldn't be happier. It
was a really interesting thing, I think, at that time. And I often find this and obviously we always try not to send you to one lender and then send you to another. But I normally find that if I can address everything that was distressing the first lender with the second lender before we submit it, that makes the process so much smoother. But what happens with lenders often is the lender policy says something like, on the acceptance of dividends, which was important to your income, they will accept a certain amount over a certain period of time, and we check all that and we make sure before we submit with that lender that that's going to be okay. but then it comes down to an individual who has their own interpretation of things.
Exactly.
And that's where it becomes difficult. And you're like, what is going on? Like, this is nothing like what we thought it would be like.
No.
So you closed that loan not out of desperation, but because they were the next, they were also very good. What we often find as well, I guess, with home loans is they're all pretty much the same. They've got, you know, similar rates, similar package fees, similar offerings. It doesn't really matter lender to lender. It's more, we make the choices more on policy and how good they're going to be for you as a borrower.
Exactly. Which, yeah, definitely came through, and yeah, couldn't be happier.
So good.
Good job, Phoebe.
Thank you. And how long do you think you'll live in this house for?
I would love to keep this place as an investment. I really like, that was one of my, you know, my like boxes to tick when buying. I wanted somewhere that could be long-term investment and would have good, you know, capital growth. So, and I can definitely see myself living here for the next about 5 years or so, I reckon. I really think once my housemate moves out in a few years, I would, you know, could live here easily by myself. But, you know, once I'm sort of, you know, earning a bigger income, I can start easily paying off my home loan just by myself. And I could easily see myself living here for the next about 5 years. It's extremely comfortable, got plenty of space for me, and then hopefully keep it as an investment and move on to a nice little townhouse or something would be ideal. But
now, and that's an interesting question. Have you set yourself up with an offset account or anything in particular because you want to keep it as an investment?
Yes, yeah, exactly. I have. So because I didn't use all of my money for my deposit, I still had a good amount of savings left. So yeah, I set up an offset account, which I had no idea what an offset account was. And for anyone who doesn't know, basically means if my home loan, for instance, was $300,000 and I had $50,000 in an offset, I would be paying interest only on the $250,000. So you don't pay the interest on how much you basically have in an offset, which is basically just like a savings account. So I did that, which has worked very, very well for me, luckily. And so it's good to have that option, just, you know, when you're picking your home loan, picking what package you're going to go on. And yeah, it works wonderful.
And I think particularly, I mean, I'm not a tax expert, but I do understand a little bit, of course. If you go onto the ATO website, you can get a lot more information about investment properties and particularly changing from something that was owner occupied into something that was investment and what some of the rules are. And one of the rules is that you can't increase that home loan for investment purposes. It has to be what it is. So if you use offset rather than paying off the loan, it has the same net effect pretty much. So it's a good thing to have. Now, next question, which you've sort of answered in this question, but I'll ask you anyway. If money was no object, would you renovate or move?
I would keep this place. Might redo the bathroom. Might be fun. I would 100% keep this apartment. It is beautiful. I love it to bits and pieces. And I would keep it as an investment, and I would move into a nice little townhouse and probably down the road in Hawthorne. So yeah, I wouldn't move very far, but I would 100% keep this place. I might I've redone the kitchen, might give the bathroom a bit of love, but I say I never sell it. I would sell probably one day, but for now, I would definitely 100% keep it, and I'll stay in it. For where I'm at in my life, it's perfect, so I would stay in it for the next couple of years.
That is excellent, Bea. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Your story is an amazing story. Did you have anything else that you wanted to let people know when they're on their own home buying journey?
I just think, obviously, recommend having a broker. I think a lot. They can give you the comfort, you know, and just the support that you need. It's one of your biggest milestones that you'll go through in your life, and you want to have the right people around you to support you. And of course, like everything, everyone has an opinion. If you talk to anyone in the street, any of your friends, any of your family, and say, "Oh, I'm about to buy a house," I can guarantee they're going to put their 2 cents in and have an opinion, which is awesome, and that's great. But sometimes it can be really overwhelming for a first home buyer, and it can really, you know, just overwhelm you. And I think it's really important to have a broker who can really sort of keep you grounded on the information, help you make the right decision, and yeah, just keep going. It seems like you'll hit a point where you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm never finding my place. But when it's meant to be, it'll be. And I cannot say that enough. I've had my, other sister buy a place after me. I've had a few friends buy places after me, and they've all just been like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to find, like, this place was right. I thought so. I'm like, just wait, it'll be. And every single one of them comes back and they're like, can't believe how right that is. When it's meant to be, it'll be. So it's
exactly so right.
So,
and we didn't mention your dad as well, who also knows a little bit about property.
Yeah.
Was it good having someone that, and just for our audience, Beatrice's father is a well-known Melbourne property developer. How was that? How helpful was Adam in the process and guiding you through stuff?
The best thing that luckily Dad could do was he did this for all my sisters as well. He bid at our auctions or negotiated for us, because he is luckily, he's had a lot of experience at auctions and bids and everything and negotiating, and he was able to just completely emotionally remove himself. Of course, this was an apartment, or house for his daughter. So he did want to, he did have some vested interest, but he was so good at I was like, Dad, we all did the same thing. Dad, this is my max. And he was like, done. He's like, you need to tell me your maximum. I'm not going a cent over that. If it sells for $5 more, tough luck. You didn't get it. I'm not going a cent more no matter what the situation, which worked so, so well. And I'm so lucky that I did, because my apartment got passed in. So it was up to negotiation, which, I mean, I might have been able to do the auction myself, but I would not have been able to negotiate myself. I would have been like, I want to just take my money. Luckily, Dad was able to negotiate that. My other sister bought her place off market, so negotiated that. And then my other sister as well, they put in an offer before auction. So he was in the negotiating. But I think it's really important. I totally admire people who are able to, buy at auction themselves. That's amazing, and that's so cool if you can. But when it does come down to the negotiation of it, even if my tip would be, even if you can have someone who know quite well, just do the bidding for you, just so they can emotionally detach themselves from the transaction. Like, it'll just help you, and it'll just keep you grounded. It will prevent you going too far over. My older sister's first auction, my mum was there, and she got a bit emotionally invested and started just nudging my dad, being like, go up, go up, go up. And he's like, no. He's like, go, go, go up, and just got a bit too overwhelmed in the situation. Like, we shouldn't buy that place because it went for far too much. But it's really, if you can have someone who's able to detach themselves from it and just see it as a transaction, I would totally recommend that, because it really, really helped. And definitely all of us got a better price because of his ability. Obviously, luckily he's a very good negotiator as well. But just having that, like, setting that line, and just knowing, because if I was bidding at this auction myself and it ended up going for $1,000 more, I definitely would have gone $1,000 higher. But he was like, no, $5 more, no, you miss out. So
it does put you in that very competitive environment, and it's interesting to see how different people respond to it. And it was one of the things, I think, the first auction that we went to, and Adam was there, and choosing when to bid, and we didn't end up getting a bid in because it went so quickly. But watching that, actually stepping back and not being emotional about it, was
it's very interesting.
Trait.
Yeah, it's a very lucky trait to have. And obviously, like I said, this is a home for his daughter, so he definitely does have a vested in it, but he is able to luckily detach himself. So, and I know my friends who they've just gotten their dad to do the bidding, or their mum to do the negotiation or something, just it's a different emotional attachment to it, and it really helps.
Yeah,
I was very lucky with that.
Really good.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to add, Bea, for anyone that's buying?
I don't think so. I think just do your research and figure out what you want, and just start looking as soon as you can. You just, even if you're still waiting for your pre-approval to come through, it is so worth just start looking at places, because you'll pick what you like, you'll pick what you don't like. You can only really get that from going and seeing places in person. So,
yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. So thanks, Bea, for talking to us about the house that you bought back in November 2019 and all the wonderfully fun experiences we had on that journey. It is absolutely such a good thing to share with everyone that's listening. I hope you listen more. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me, Phoebe. Bye.
A pleasure.
Disclaimer. Just a reminder that the advice that's contained in this podcast is general in nature.
It doesn't take into account your individual needs and circumstances, and we recommend considering the appropriateness of any advice to your individual circumstances and needs. We always recommend seeking the advice of an expert before making any financial decisions.